So my name is Tony Asaro. I am an industry analyst. I work with a lot of customers. I've been focusing on the disk-to-disk backup market for a number of years and sort of seen the journey from the beginning. My company did an early hands-on evaluation of both Data Domain and Avamar, so I'm familiar with both of those technologies. I've spoken to dozens and dozens of customers who have implemented it and have also done a number of these customer panels as well. The way I'd like this to work is I want to make it very interactive. So we've got 4 customers, EMC customers. 2 of them are doing Data Domain and 2 of them are doing Avamar. We want to talk about disk-to-disk backup in general. We want to talk about the impact on tape. I also want to come out in the audience and just early on, questions, concerns, issues. I still run into a number of customers who have got tape. They're concerned around issues of governance. They're concerned around issues of scalability. And so we want to answer those questions. Their environments vary in size, but we've got some very large environments here as well. We have smaller environments where people say, well, why should I bother doing it if I've got a small environment also? So we're going to go through that, and I'm going to let each one of the customer panelists introduce themselves and give a little bit of a background on their environments. And just so that if you're like me, I don't retain much information these days anymore. Before I introduce the panel, I would like to show of hands. How many of you are still primarily backing up to tape? Okay, good. Then this is a good session for you. So I'll be coming out in the back row and talking. So, Guy, why don't we start with you?
Yeah, my name's Guy Chapman. I'm the Senior Engineer for Virtualization and Storage with SunGard Financial Systems. We are a busy dev and test shop. SunGard Financial Systems is one of the 20 largest software companies in the world. SunGard's a Fortune 500 company. SunGard Financial Systems is the largest division of SunGard. We've got about 4,500 people around the world, and my biggest environment is in Canary Wharf in London. And we've got over 1,000 virtual machines there running off about 25 servers. So we drive our virtual infrastructure very, very hard indeed. And we had to move from tape to disk basically because the backup window was never closed. We never ever managed to get to the end of the backups. Also, there's a lot of admin overhead in remediations, tape handling and so on.
So in your situation, it was a matter of not meeting the backup window. Saving on operational costs and capital costs was a nice benefit.
Yep.
Okay.
And the best thing is that you get into the position of not having to present the business with hard choices anymore. If you've got a limited backup window, if you've got tape infrastructure that only allows you to back up a certain amount of stuff in the time, then you have to go to the business and say, okay, these few virtual machines here that you don't think are very important, we'll not back those up, we'll just leave them. I don't think that's a great answer. I think the business needs to have everything backed up, because if the office goes down, it doesn't matter if that individual virtual machine is of low criticality. That might be just the one they need to fix a particular customer issue in an invocation. So, we didn't want to present the business with hard choices. We wanted to present them with nice, transparent choices. Everything is backed up. Now you pay more if you want better RTOs and RPOs.
Very good. And one other thing that I wanted to mention, too, because we do want to have a VMware focus on this because we're at VMworld. So it's backing up your VM environments. But also, you implemented your solution as a Data Domain as a nearline solution as well for your VMware environment. So
absolutely.
Talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, that's saved us an awful lot of money. We're building a self-service portal at the moment. We're sort of transitioning our virtual infrastructure into what people now call a private cloud, and we're handing over everything as far as possible to our end users, so they get their portal and they get their list of virtual machines. And one of the things we thought about was that we might get a depersonalized customer database, which might be anything up to 1 terabyte in size, and we'll have to import that into our software, and we'll have to configure everything up and get it working. That might take a couple of days, and then they can code a patch for the customer or develop a custom module. Well, that virtual machine's got a lot of investment of time in it, but then for the next, 3 months, it might not be needed at all. It might be needed if the customer comes back and asks for more, but it might not be needed. So we have a lot of inactive virtual machines taking up primary storage. So we saw that the Data Domain will export an NFS share, and we looked at VMware, and you think, NFS, VMware, yeah, we know how to make use of that. So The people who are doing our self-service portal, which is Dynamic Ops, which Dell are now OEMing as part of their VIS product, by the way, they coded for us a workflow, so my end users can say, right, I'm not going to use that virtual machine for a while, so I'm just going to retire it to nearline, and it kicks off a demotion in the background, and it quietly moves the virtual machine onto the data domain. And by the time you've deduped it and compressed it and all the other stuff that you do, it's costing us about 50 cents a gig to keep those virtual machines on the data domain rather than $5 a gig or more on primary storage. So we've saved, we reckon, about $40,000 this year in primary storage just by using this retirement workflow.
Right. So for those of you who may not be familiar with the data domain solution in depth, so obviously it's being used as a backup target. But you can also mount it as an NFS mount, and you can move virtual machines to it as a nearline storage system. So it was an interesting combination of both. Saved you a ton of money. You're using it for both. Are you using the same data domains to do backup and nearline, or you dedicate one?
Yep, it's not causing us a problem. We might one day split them out, but actually we've noticed that on occasion people have accidentally spun up a virtual machine on the data domain, and it's not recommended, but I'm here to tell you it actually works. And if you're using something like Veeam, one of the modern products that doesn't do backup and restore, because tape sucks, backup sucks, restore sucks really badly, because then you've got delays just at the time when you don't want them. If you look at people like Veeam, who are now giving you effectively a point-in-time replica of your virtual machine onto your backup storage, and then it replicates over to your recovery location, you can actually spin up that virtual machine on the data domain store in the recovery location. You've got recovery of data instantly, recovery of service at a low level instantly, and then you can let the business tier that into the primary storage in your recovery environment in the order that they want to.
Exactly. So just to get back to backup for a second, your backup cost savings, my notes say that you guys have reduced backup costs by 10 times per virtual machine. Is that accurate?
That's roughly what we calculated at, yeah. Right. That was including all the people overhead, the tape handling overhead, etc.
Right. All right, very good. So I'm going to introduce Jules now. Interestingly, we did not plan this, and maybe nobody else finds this amusing, but they're actually sitting in the exact spot in which they're on the slide. So, So Jules, with Pitt, Ohio, please give us a background in your environment.
Well, first I want to say I hate following Guy Chapman in speaking, so...
well, you can pretend like you have a British accent too, because that was totally fake.
That's horrible. You
know he really from the Bronx.
He heard my Irish accent. He don't like it.
It's the gravitational thing. You see, he's so big, he's actually got a gravity well around him.
Great. Well, I'm Jules Thomas. I work at Pitt, Ohio Express, based out of Pittsburgh. We're an LTL trucking company. We basically do shipments throughout all of North American continent through our Reliance network. Basically, we have a 98% on-time delivery, which is very good in the industry. And not only that, we started ground services to compete against a couple of small competitors, FedEx and UPS. And pretty much moving forward into that realm. And what's nice about Pitt Express is, although it's a smaller company, like you were saying, compared to some of these other ones, our president, Chuck Hamill, and CIO, Scott Sullivan, very, very adamant of putting technology in our data center and using technology to drive a business forward.
Right. So going up against major competitors, using technology to make sure that you're competitive.
Try to make our data center look showcase, credible for customers. Say, hey, look, we're not. I know we're smaller, but if you come see our facility, you'll see that we're not just a fly-by-the-night company. We're really putting a lot of money towards our technology.
And you guys are 90% virtualized now in your environment.
We're getting there. We had a little standstill because of resources with our systems, but we recently fixed that with a Cisco UCS system, and along with that is the 10 gig, but I'll get to that point.
Yep.
So when I first started Pitt Express, one of the first goals was to start try to get the backup solution in a better state, because we were using a subpar software platform, and again, we're using tape. And we had a lot of issues where not only were we having issues with the software backing up the tape, but again, if anybody does tape and tape management and you have to do a restore, you have to make sure that his tapes are on site so you can get that restore. Well, most of the time, when you get a request, it's already a week later and that tape's off site. So you got to call it back, throw it in the library, and try to get that data back into the system. And of course, you always try anyway. You know the tape's off-site, but you still try, and you hit start and you wait for the software to say, hey, you need the tape. So, and we wanted to get rid of that. So phase one was we wanted to at least get a new software in place, and at the time we wanted the leading software vendor that was doing more with the VCB was NetBackup. So we decided to go with NetBackup at the time and try to fully utilize VCB, because if you're going virtual, you do want to take advantage of having a machine and virtually encapsulated so you can have a full snapshot image backed up versus using an agent. So that was stage one. And stage two was we knew we wanted to go to disk to disk. You're not going to go disk to disk unless you have some type of deduplication, because let's face it, if you have to do just two weeks of retention time, you're looking at roughly 3.5x amount of storage to just to hold that 2 weeks of retention.
So were those things happening at the same time? I mean, you're replacing the front end and the back end at the same time, looking at both?
It was probably a few months in between.
Okay.
It was first get the software in place, get all the machines on there, get the virtual machines backing up to the tape via VCB, and then start going with the disk to disk, and then have a hybrid effect where we're doing disk to disk. Oh, before we got to that point, we end up trying HP, EMC at the time before the acquisition, and a couple other vendors. And after doing much research, we decided on Data Domain because it's definitely by far the best and most superior product out there.
And you mentioned that obviously the issues and challenges, I think everybody in the room with recovering files that have been shipped off to tape. So it seems to me one of your goals on the disk-to-disk side was to have longer retention periods.
Absolutely. So the whole goal was have longer retention capabilities, obviously faster backups and restores, and then also in prep for a DR design, because we were thinking that, at the time, the easiest way to do a DR scenario is to replicate the data domain devices and then have hardware on standby or hardware in use maybe for QA, and we can do a full local restore and get production back up and running, right, utilizing the replication of data domain. So when we first started, we pretty much were, okay, let's start off with maybe see if we get 3 months of retention time. Before, and when you get data domain and they do their analysis, they pretty much, just to be safe, they will give you a retention time that, say they give you 3 months. Most of the time you can do way more, but they have to be, they have to be conservative on their estimates. So we were finding just with that configuration, we were able to get up to a year.
Periods on tape?
Okay, well, so on tape it's up to 7 years.
No. So I meant locally, so in other words, before you ship them off.
Oh, yeah, your standard 1 week.
1 week.
Yes.
So you went from 1 week to 3 months on site. Was that the goal?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah. And we found out that after 3 months we can keep expanding, and before I knew it, we were hitting a year. And now we just expanded our data domain devices with more storage so we can utilize 1 to 7 years. And the reason I say 1 to 7 years, we have certain data stores that require 7 years of retention time, and we have other standard file and print that a year is sufficient, right, or email or something.
And this is all local? You keep all that data local?
Correct. So we have a local data domain device that will hold the 1 to 7 years, and then that gets replicated to our DR site, which will be our QA environment, so we don't have a cold site on standby. We actually utilize the hardware that's over there, and then utilize a second data domain device that's fully real-time replicated to do a full restore dump if we had to in case of disaster. Also on a bi-year or twice-a-year process, normalized QA, which will be a DR test for us.
Guy, I got to get back to you on this. So Guy's problem was initially that he had a 24-hour backup window, but it took 28 hours to do his backup.
You got it.
Well, was that an issue for you, and how did it improve your backup windows?
We had an issue with backup windows, so we were able to fix that with just doing the incrementals that NetBackup had and fulls. We couldn't do it with the other software.
Right.
We had major issues because its incrementals were very hard to work with, and they never worked. So we actually had to do full backup. So we had the time window issue at that point, but we did fix that with the software. That wasn't the main point. The more of the point was retention on time, tape management, and get rid of tape. That we really wanted to go tapeless. That was the whole goal.
So you are tapeless now?
Not fully tapeless just yet because we're at the end of our process of taking the second device off site, but I would say within 2 months we'll be tapeless.
Okay, very good.
And just to add on to that, this 7-year data retention time data that I was talking about, what really was cool, you're talking about, incorporating VMware and virtualization.
Right.
We have a data store that's roughly 700 gigs in size that has tens of millions of files. While taking advantage of virtualization, disk backups, if you tried to back that up via the agent, it's going to take every file and it has to basically process each file, and that backup literally takes 6 days to back up. Doesn't matter the bandwidth you have. We had 10 gigabit Ethernet. We still had 6 days to wait for it to back up. While utilizing VMDK encapsulation and backing up that same data set using an unmapped VMDK backup, we took it from 6 days to 2 hours and 9 minutes.
6 days to 2 hours. So that's a backup window for you.
Yeah.
From 6 days to 2 hours.
So it's
Guy, tell me
I've actually got a question for you here, Jules. Are you using the write-only file systems on the data domain for your compliance stores?
Can you repeat that again?
Are you using write-only file systems on the data domain for compliance?
For the second one, we're just doing a one-way replication feature, if that's right.
Because we only just found out that this exists. That shows how stupid we are. We bought the product and we didn't even realize it did all this clever stuff. We've now discovered that you can have a write-only file system on the data domain, and that's perfect for compliance reasons. You can write to it, and then it can't be erased.
Yeah, the second one is just it cannot replicate back. So we didn't do the write-only now.
So you're talking about like a worm type of thing? It just
it's just like effectively it functions like content addressable storage for
write
compliance.
Write once. So you create a worm on it so that now it's immutable. You can't do it. I mean, write only implies you can't read it, which would not be a good thing.
Oh, well, yeah. Somebody did actually come up with a use case for that, but I can't remember what it was.
Yeah, I think some senators who texted might want that. You can write it, but you can't read it.
Yeah.
What did your window go to, Guy, after implementing the data domain?
It's down to about 5-6 hours, something like that.
So from 28 hours to 5 or 6 hours.
Yeah, but it's not just the 28 hours down to the 5 or 6. It's the fact that we've tripled the scope of the backup.
Right. So you're growing the scope, and the window still is well underneath.
And we can't actually feed data at the data domain faster than it can crunch it. That's the most surprising thing. I mean, I talked to some friends of mine at Thomson Reuters in London. They had, I think, something like 20 net backup media servers, and they were firing data at a DD690, and they physically could not fire data at this machine faster than it could write it to disk, which is astounding.
So I think that's important, because I think some of the customers that I talk to have very large, STK tape libraries, and they're thinking about replacing it. There's a market perception that data domain doesn't scale to that, but it sounds like what you're saying is that it can. Right?
And I just want to add too, just having the faster backups and utilizing vStorage API driven softwares and doing image backups of your virtual machines. Having the fast backups, now you can talk about backing up a server 3 or 4 times a day, so you can have all those different restore points.
Right. So
because if they only take 5 minutes,
your recovery points become more granular.
Right.
Okay, great. All right, Chris. We are now going to be talking about Avamar. You are an Avamar customer, so give us a little bit of background on your environment.
So, my name's Chris Leese. I work for Lowe's Companies, the big hardware store out there. I'm sure all you guys have been in at least once. That's why I'm able to work here. Thank you very much. We are an Avamar shop. I'm going on about 3 years with the company, and ever since I've been in the door there, we've always been disk to disk. We haven't had tape on the open system side since I've been there. And we went with Avamar for more of a reliability, scalability, the cliched performance type, perspectives of everything. And the reason we did that was during the big ESX push that we started doing just over a year ago to start migrating all the physicals to virtuals. Prior to bringing in Avamar, we used a third-party piece of software where all we did was take snapshots of these, or checkpoint snapshots, whichever you want to call them, of the VMDKs or the VMs, and move them off to a CIF share that they had. And from there, we would replicate that with Solera Replicator down to our DR site. We didn't get much performance out of that. It was maybe reliable. We weren't able to do very much DR testing with it. When we did do DR testing, maybe it would work, maybe it wouldn't work, but now that we have the Avamar grid in there, we're able to replicate with the Avamar software.
So Avamar, different from Data Domain. Data Domain is a target. You use your backup software and you back up to it. Avamar is backup software and also has a target that you back up to, and you've implemented that end to end.
Correct.
Right. And you also say in the VMware environment that over half of your environment is virtualized now?
We've hit just over 52% last week.
Right. So specifically with VMware, what is the advantage of Avamar in a VMware environment for you guys?
So the advantage that we're getting is a lot of similarities. So when we back up, the 52% of our servers that we have, somewhere around 1,000 servers, we see like 98% similarities. So when it goes from backing up one server, you're backing up a heck of a lot more with that one server, since we're going to get that dedupe ratio in there.
Right. So you're getting like a 98% dedupe ratio.
That's what we see. Yep.
That's pretty cool.
We actually went from when we brought it in, we went from about 6 minutes to back up a server down to just under a minute, like 53 seconds per server.
So operationally, what's the impact to you guys?
The backup window that we've had is cut down, just like everybody else has said. That's one of the biggest things. But it's more, like I said earlier, more performance and reliability. We're able to start getting the business on board with putting some tier 1 applications in the virtualization environment, starting to get some Oracle databases out there. So we see any kind of application, we've got it all across the board.
So you feel like it helped enable you on the VMware side to actually put more high-performance applications online?
Right, very much so. It's any new server that's requested now, first look is a VM. Right. So it's going to take some serious performance for it to not be a VM and to be a very high tier 1 application.
Right. So it's kind of a VM first approach to
right.
Your policies.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, from the point of view, too, that you said that you came into an environment that was tapeless, which really isn't fair to everybody else. But, so the idea that you've already bought off on that aspect of it, and what issues or challenges or problems have you had just in a dis-to-dis environment only that might affect your business, or have you guys already worked through all of those issues? What about governance? What about DR? What about any of those types of things?
With Avamar in there, very little, almost no problems at all in the little over 2 years we've had it on site. DR testing, again, like I said earlier, tier 1 applications on there, the business is starting to sign off on it, and the DR testing that we have is 100% more reliable than it was when we had that third-party piece of software and they were just taking snapshots and moving it off to a CIF share. So because Avamar and the reliability that we have of that, we're able to actually bring in the ESX servers for all of our DR tests. We do 2 a year, every 6 months, and they're testing all the tier 1, 2, and 3 applications that sit on our VMs.
Right.
Because we can get all that software down there.
So you got 98% dedupe and 100% better DR.
That's correct.
Those are big numbers. All right, I'm going to bring Sean up next, if I could.
I'm Sean Morton. I'm with Siemens IT Solutions and Services. We're a managed service hosting provider, internally and externally. So we provide the IT for our internal companies through, pretty much EMEA all the way through to the States here.
Right.
We have currently our external customers with the Avamar systems, internal customers. We're doing a virtualization program internally that we are probably 25 to 30% through the virtualization process. As far as the external customers, we do infrastructure as a service all the way to application management.
So you've not used the word cloud once.
It's gotten to be such a ubiquitous term
right.
that really through being a managed service hosting provider, in the infrastructure as a service, it is all cloud. Right. How much of your cloud you want to share if if you're a cloud by yourself,
right.
or a lot of we have the flexibility to do that internally, that we are our own very large cloud.
Right.
But because of that, we have the models to spin up much smaller clouds for the mainly the external facing.
Right. Well, I applaud you for waiting until I nudged you on that side. So on the ESX servers, how many ESX servers do you have today that's under management?
I would say several thousand.
Okay. Very good.
With the Avamar systems, my primary focus is data protection. So being in the enterprise architecture space, we run the gamut of high-performance grid apps all the way through long-term archival. Avamar for us fills a backup and recovery piece that previously, because we deal with so many customers, even our own, we ended up with a lot of backup engineers doing a lot of different things, whether it was custom scripts, whether it was some of the other software providers, some of the other disk-to-disk solutions, disk-to-tape. When you run so many solutions, Avamar filled the spot because they're able to actually answer a lot of the questions and do it in a leveraged infrastructure fashion.
Right, so heterogeneously across operating environments is what you're talking about, VMware and non-VMware environments. Right?
Correct.
So what's your philosophy on tape?
We actually advocate just getting rid of it if you can. I mean, it fills a spot that if you have to have it for archival and shipping it off, then we'll work with you to keep it, but it's one of those that there really has to be a special request because it's just not an effective management solution for us.
So, but you guys were heavily a tape environment up until recently, or what was the before and after?
Many of the customers that we have actually end up, we do our best to clean out the tape and to move away from it internally, and then of course you board a new customer, and one of the first problems you usually hear is, hey, by the way, what do I do with all these?
Right.
So we inherit tape and then try to migrate away from it again and again and again.
Right, okay, fair enough. And in your environment with VMware specifically, is there, I know it's heterogeneous across operating environments, but specifically in VMware, is there a particular advantage? Is there something about it that you feel is specifically helping you operationally with VMware using Avamar?
Definitely. I mean, we've seen operational improvements, 50% gains, just being able to maintain competencies that are focused. And then with the integration of your VMware engineers and your backup engineers, they begin to understand each other and they know the handoffs.
Right.
And it becomes a little more seamless in the handoff there. You don't get the siloed tower approach where things happen to fall in the middle a lot.
Right. So what do you attribute that to? Is it the tight integration with the VMware storage stack? Is it the integration into the GUI management interfaces? What are the reasons why Avamar seems to help you operationally in a VMware environment?
When you get such tight integration, that is one of the primaries. When you get such tight integration, you end up with the synergistic technologies like change block tracking being your first level of deduplication.
Right.
When you don't need to send it over the wire and you don't need an agent querying, you're saving yourself bandwidth, you're saving yourself CPU overhead from the agent,
right,
because you've already been able to look at it from a vSphere standpoint and realize that it just doesn't need to go.
Right. And with the Avamar stuff, you're actually deduping at the host level. So even over the network, you're getting a lot of bandwidth optimization as well.
It's a good problem to have because when you start looking at the cost synergies of something like this, I mean, normally you're getting better backup windows, you're getting managed competencies, you're getting leveraged infrastructure, but you also start to cross into some of the other towers.
Right.
Now, how do you build the cost savings around what used to be your backup department, and now you're saving the network considerable amounts of bandwidth?
Right.
It's a good problem to have to figure out where to credit the savings.
Right, exactly. So what about your dedupe ratios? What are you guys getting?
First time, we're getting probably 80% on the load, and then probably in excess of 98% ongoing.
Right. And have you guys quantified at all what your cost savings are today, and do you have any projections going forward?
Again, it's not knowing where to credit the silos.
Right.
We have an overall cost savings that we're looking at, and so far, it ranges depending on how badly the hosted environment had gotten away from them.
Right.
As you start to consolidate this, we're seeing anything from, we'll save you 15% all the way up to in excess of 50%.
Right. All right, fair enough. All right, well, I want to ask the audience if they have any specific questions around their environments. So we have a mic, and I can come to you as well. Any questions at all? Could you go to the mic just so that everyone can hear it? Because it's so crowded in here that some people might not hear.
We'll queue up a line.
I guess my question would be for Chris or Sean, anybody who's using the Avamar product. When we virtualize roughly 90% of our environment, but our traditional backups still are hitting the host very heavy, but as well they're hitting the storage heavy. Did you see any reduction in your storage contention when you went to Avamar?
The primary storage contention?
Primary storage.
Oh, it's actually.
Is this better?
All right, so why don't you just use the standing one? Yeah. We've figured out dedupe, but we haven't figured out microphones.
I think I heard the question as far as some of the relief on the primary storage when using Avamar. There was, both from an I/O standpoint, because you're not taxing your primary storage quite as much because of the deduplication. There's a lot less I/O contention, but there's also the advantages of doing the backup and recovery piece of it, the recovery being that Avamar is self-contained. So you're not having to rely on a lot of the systems that would effectively use your primary storage subsystems for the backup itself. It's self-contained, therefore it can be, it gives you a bit of a risk domain isolation for your backup and recovery systems as opposed to joining one of your infrastructure tiers.
So you're using the proxy, Avamar proxy, is that correct?
Both the Avamar proxy or just the agent to the grid, in the fact that the grid is not on your primary storage infrastructure.
Right, but because you're using change block tracking and it's dedupe at the source, you're not hitting the storage, the primary storage, near as much.
Correct.
Right.
From our perspective, I'm glad Sean answered it because it's hard for me to answer that. We brought in our back end, our CX4s, the 960s, and moved off Symmetrics. So it's hard for us to quantify how much we're saving in hitting that back end storage, just because we did all roll it in at once and kick it off right away from Clarion to Avamar as opposed to SIM to Avamar or SIM to EDO.
See, I can look in Virtual Center and look at the performance and the delay on the storage during backups, and it's significant. And I was hoping this would address that problem.
It does, and it also you can watch some of the CPU spikes during your backup window, and anytime you get the deduplication, you reduce the backup window, and all of a sudden you're not invoking failovers or allocations of adjustments. Normally that's not an issue because your backup windows are happening off hours, but if you get some follow the sun type applications, you can really negatively impact the system by having a backup window because there isn't a lot of downtime.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, a lot of that benefit comes from the change block tracking itself. I mean, the vStorage APIs have, for us, significantly reduced the load on the store when we're running backups. And also the fact that the backups run very quickly now means that the period when the infrastructure is under load for backup is much shorter than it used to be.
Right. So when you're using the proxy, are you getting application consistent backups?
Definitely.
Okay.
And it
Everything's
depends.
short of the log trimming.
It depends on what you're really going after because you can go, through data protection, whether you're looking for, the database integration or if you're trying to, do you have a secondary system that runs to be able to provide the availability that you're just trying to push to, or are you trying to actually take a system state recovery and push that to another site? It gave you the flexibility to really kind of pick and choose and model how you wanted to protect it, and you could start with going from an application high availability and transition over to another level of protection and let them run independendly. That's
how we use Avamar strictly file level backups, but then we brought in Replication Manager to integrate right with vCenter. That's where we get our VMware or the application consistent backups. We take the consistent snapshots on the ESX server and then keep those for 3 days on the Clarion as just snapshots.
So you're backing up the replication copy?
Can you ask that again?
Are you replicating and then backing up the replication?
No, we're back up to Avamar with the network client, so just file level back up to Avamar. And then at the VMDK level, we're using Replication Manager and snapshots on the Clarion for that.
Is anybody using Site Recovery Manager?
We do use that. I could speak to that a little bit. I'm primary on storage, so I'm not in front of ESX all day long. So we use that for our DR testing.
Well, you made that first part. So the guys who are in the environments that we asked you specifically, are there reasons that are you all planning to? Do you have a dis-to-dis project going forward, or is it just something in your radar? Yeah, do you mind coming up to the mic and speaking? We're going to put you on the spot. We'll get you a T-shirt afterwards.
I can handle the spot.
Okay, good.
I have a boss that's old school. He likes to take a tape off site every night.
Yeah.
And yeah, but I have a couple questions that I'd like to ask about data domain, because we currently we have somewhere in the neighborhood of about 200 VMs, and in the past I had problems quiescing the database to get a good consistent backup. And I'm wondering if I use data domain, do I have to quiesce before I transfer the? Do you guys quiesce? How does that work?
Data domain is still a storage. It's basically just a storage target. So you have to use some software to back it up, Veeam or Net Backup or whatever you're going to use.
Data protector.
Yeah, but the point is that the software does have to snapshot or quiesce the VM, but that's handled for us by the vStorage APIs. They create a snapshot in the background and then stream the VMs off. What we find is that because the backup to the data domain is very fast, the snapshots don't run for very long, and then the redeployment of the snapshot, the disposal of the snapshot is quick. Whereas when we were running to tape, you would typically have a snapshot running for anything up to an hour for a virtual machine, and that would have quite a significant effect on the space availability on the primary storage. And if your tape silo went bang or cause you a delay in the backup, we would occasionally find that we'd run out of storage. The storage would just completely fill up with snapshots. Snapshots would not be correctly disposed, and so on. There's a lot of care and feeding of snapshots in backup software. That's why I'm pushing now to move towards Veeam rather than using a classic backup package, because Veeam just does that rather better.
How does Avamar handle that?
Exactly same way.
Yeah, it's vStorage APIs. It's just how it does it. But at least the vStorage API, unlike VCB, actually does work.
Yeah, and to add to that too, depending what version you running. You run 4 or are you still on 3X?
We're on 4 today, but we're well aware we're going to lose VCB when we.
Right, because with VCB there was also some VMware tool options you had to do to have successful quiescing of the database when you're doing a snapshot backup. But if you're on 4, I don't think there's too many issues on respect to that. But I can tell you for first-hand experience, we had a VM that was, a SQL VM that completely crashed, and it was, roughly 200 gig VM, and we were able to fully restore it and bring up the database, and it was just basically the database at that, from that snapshot time. But everything came up cleanly, smoothly, and there was nothing that needed to be done on the DBA side. So it definitely works, and you can have lots of success with doing VM snapshot backups via vStorage API or whatnot.
Okay, thank you.
So what about scalability? That's one of the other things that some people talk to me about. It's like, yeah, but we've got these massive environments taking up walls and walls of floor space on our data center. How do we replace that with a dis-to-dis backup solution? I'd like to hear from all of you guys on what, number one, do you see that as a problem? Number two, put us in your environment where, we were able to replace those massive systems and it actually helped or, was fine. and then also just give us a notion of your environment so that people can put in perspective compared to their environments. So, Guy, we'll just go down the...
For my money, I think, and Sean's
Why don't you stand up and...
Sean's going to shoot me for this, but I think Avamar is slightly easier to scale incrementally out to an enormous environment. You've got scale boundaries with the data domain unit for sure, but then before you get too hung up on that, we've got a CX4 480. It's got something like 48 terabytes of storage on it now. We store all of that with several restore points on a single data domain DD690. At one point we had 220 terabytes of front end stored on under 16 terabytes of back end. We replicate to our recovery site over a 10 megabit link, and the run rate on replication over the link was 40 to 60% of link bandwidth. So that is, I think most people would consider that a fairly large, fairly busy environment, 1,000 odd virtual machines and 48 terabytes of storage, including Solera data and so on. And that was just on a single DD690, and now you've got the 880 with the global dedupe array. And we're just putting one of those into our recovery environment. So if you are running data centers with tens of thousands of devices in, you're going to have to do some hard thinking about exactly how you slice and dice it and so on. But I don't think your size of your environment is going to necessarily say you must use a data domain or you must use Avamar. It's much more down, I think, to operational constraints, what you're comfortable with, what other use cases you can come up with it, like our NFS use case. Both of them are very good, very competent, very professionally supported products.
Right.
And I think it really is down to what suits your operational model. And we all know, EMC being who they are, that these two technologies are going to converge over time anyway.
Right.
So we can get some of the benefits of the Avamar into the data domain world, and some of the benefits of data domain into the Avamar world over time. So they're both a good choice.
Yeah, I just meant compared to tape, right? So from a tape perspective, in very large environments, people are still somewhat cautious at the large enterprise, and we just need data points for people to feel more comfortable about it, right? Because the vendors will, of course, present their products as much as they can to the opportunity, but people who actually lived it, right? That's what we're here for. So,
Okay.
Well, I don't know if I would say this would reduce the footprint of the data center, but it's more of a partnership with the virtualization and the disk backups, and taking full advantages again of virtualization backups and fully utilizing your deduplication disk. For example, with our virtualization efforts, taking our data center from 30 racks down to 5. So utilizing again, Cisco UCS and throwing all of our vSphere 4 hosts on that blade system,
right.
We were able to reduce the footprint completely down to 5 racks. So it's more of a partnership, not just simply getting rid of tape to reduce the
Sound like to me
footprint.
you reduced the data center pretty substantially.
Yeah, but it was more of a partnership with the virtualization also.
Right, no, understood. It's a combination of things, right?
Correct.
So, but getting rid of big bulky tape libraries is a part of that as well, right? So.
Absolutely, but and again, it depends on the size of your environment. We're not as large, so our tape environment was just a rack.
Right, right.
But if you have a silo, it would definitely reduce a huge footprint.
Right, exactly. Okay, very good.
So do I get a get out of jail free card on this one?
Yeah, because you were no tape beforehand, but.
I can only imagine that all the tape we had, we just gave to the mainframe people because I hear them talk about that all the time.
Very good.
As a hosting provider, it was one of those things that to have a tape library to provide the power, the cooling, all the environmentals that go into it.
Right.
Especially now when you're getting into the cloud and cloud services, I could much more effectively use that power and space to host VMs as opposed to hosting tape libraries.
Right.
So it's a much better cost recovery to be able to use it that way. From the cloud, it works well because you've got it all there. You've got your core competencies where you need them. The one that'll scare you is the guys that lingered. You've got the remote field office, the engineering application. Anybody that says, okay, nah, I can't virtualize it. It still gives you the ability to, okay, I don't have your server. I'm not watching your server actively managing it, but I can still provide you backup and recovery services to your field office locations.
Right. Well, what about your customers? I mean, were they concerned? Did they care just as long as you met your SLAs? Did they have corporate governance issues? You know, what were some of the pushback, or was there any pushback on going to a disk-to-disk environment versus tape?
It's surprising we ended up with a lot of show me. Show me, I don't, you know, you couldn't have gotten my backup that fast.
Right.
Restore something.
You were faking it, right?
Yeah. It was, no, you know, it only took you this long.
Right.
I didn't see it on my network. I didn't see it on the performance hits. I didn't.
Right.
And you start to be able to really standardize your offerings.
Right.
Now all of a sudden everybody gets the same retention policies. Everybody, and you get to work into a backup window that traditionally everybody's like, oh, you know, I got to start my backups. You know, Friday night I want to start one to make sure it completes by Monday morning.
Right.
Now you're able to actually move it around and say, okay, we're going to start your backups. 2 hours later, we're going to start their backups. 2 hours later, we're going to start their backups. If there happens to be some overrun, we'll figure it out. And everybody kind of stopped and said, wait a minute, 2 hours?
Right.
Yeah, we got 90% of your servers in the first 30 minutes.
Right.
There might be some lingering, but it's not going to be the, because in previous legacy systems, we had problems where, 48 hours into a 24-hour backup window.
Right.
Yeah. Well, that's an important point, because if you've got multiple different applications running in your environment, the weekend may not be the best time to back those up. If you've got weekend batch jobs running, things like that, there may be some applications which are best backed up, I don't know, on a Wednesday morning. Maybe that's the select time in that particular application. So you can move your backup windows around much more easily than you can with tape, because with tape, if you start feeding stuff to tape at the wrong time of day and so on, it interferes with your operational constraints. You end up having to get physical access at the wrong times in order to get the tape out and get the tape off-site to meet your off-site SLAs. So, it just crosses all of that stuff out. Plus, of course, it removes one fairly large source of physical access to your data center.
Right.
And nobody likes physical access to the data center. It's all the security guys hate people having data center passes. They want maybe one guy who can go in there and then he's scrutinized by Big Brother on 500 cameras. Security guys hate it when you physically access your data center.
Yeah, I hate going in there anyway. I get deaf anyhow. So so let's talk about the transition. So one of the other things that I get questions time and time again is, okay, we've got this tape infrastructure. What is the process? Or we've got another backup application. What is the process? What does it look like? How do you plan for it? What's the time drain on it? What's the people resource? Now, this is going to vary from environment to environment. And Chris, you get out of this one again. But what is a reasonable process given your environment to go through that and make the conversions?
A lot of it during transition and transformation, the Avamar agent loads became a prerequisite step, and they just said, hey, well, and it was non-intrusive enough or polite enough to the other resources, or if you could actually guarantee them through throttling that we're not going to negatively impact your systems. You end up loading the agent, and then you pre-seed the data prior to a migration. So now you're able to not only bring the server into your virtual infrastructure, but you've already got the backup with it.
Right.
The other thing that we ran into was that we kind of standardized that. You get people that say, oh, okay, well, I'm going to need this many incrementals, but I need this full. With Avamar, you get consistent fulls all the time.
Right.
And now you're telling somebody, no, I can restore anything you need, any point in time recovery during the day for the last 30 days, if that's your standard retention.
Do you get any pushback from your Oracle DBAs and guys like that on having agents on the box?
No, actually, they've been very receptive to it because it gives you the ability to do, they'll tell you, hey, I'm going to offload, capture this. And then what it is a coordinated effort, because now you've got a backup and recovery that's providing you once every 24 hours. And then they start to look at it going, okay, well, if I offload to here, this is where I need to go. It ends up being a coordinated effort between the backup administrator and the DBA. But now you're able to scale using the database, redo logs, whatever it is they need to recompile the database in the event of a recovery. up to your backup window and then transition from your backup window to your retention policy.
Right. Because that's an issue I have. I hesitate to use the term prima donnas, but actually, no, I don't. The Oracle DBAs, to my mind, are they're a special kind of guy. You know, they know how. No, I mean this in the most respectful way. Our Oracle DBAs.
My teacher used to call me special.
These guys are Unix beards, yeah. So they know exactly how to dredge out the last bit of performance out of that box.
Right.
You know, they've got it tuned, they've got it refined, they've got it exactly the way they like. And one of the things we love about the data domain box is because you've got the NFS share, they can just run an RMAT dump onto NFS. They know how to do that. They like doing it that way. They know how to reinflate their data from that. They know how to ship logs into an NFS share. So we just say, hey, there you go.
Yeah,
and we can outsource that whole world of pain to them.
Yeah, I'm seeing that as being quite successful, pervasive throughout the marketplace in the data domain environments. But
yeah, with the agent integration, you can say, hey, you know, the agent can do this for you if you'd like. And they usually kind of give it the raised eye.
Yeah, we get
say,
that.
okay, well, tell you what, let's not have the agent do that. Where would you like to put it?
Yeah.
We'll take it from there.
Yeah, I mean,
so during
that particular guy I'm thinking of here, he's 62 years old, he's Russian, he's done it that way all his life, and he ain't going to change anytime soon.
So you're saying is a fairly transparent process. You can do things in parallel. You don't have to. You can transition it. It's unobtrusive. You can test it. You can prove it. You can put it through that process fairly gracefully throughout the whole process. But given that, how long of a time period and how many people did it take for you to accomplish this?
It's actually, we've integrated it into part of the transition and transformation of going virtual.
Right.
I mean, it's something that's non-intrusive enough that it actually becomes a couple of steps in a workflow, as opposed to having to start up an entire, managed project program to get the transition over.
Right. Yeah, that is the best way to do it, is to do it as you virtualize.
Right.
Because we had to go back and retrofit into a very diverse, heterogeneous environment, and that was quite hard work.
Right.
It took us easily 6 months of third-line engineer time to get everything screwed down and sorted out. It was worth the pain. It's definitely worth the pain. But if you
how many years ago did you guys start this process?
Middle of last year for us.
Okay.
In fact, we bought Data Domain, and my friend Mr. Tucci said, hey, that's a smart purchase. I think I'll have the whole company.
Oh, so you're the reason.
We absolutely, yeah.
You got something
we were just going through the purchase cycle at precisely that time, and we were about to place the PO, and the NetApp bid came in, and we thought, that's difficult because we're not a NetApp shop. Right. And then good old Joe upped the ante a little bit, and it went into EMC, and we thought, okay, we're happy with that now.
So we're coming close to the end. I just want to. I didn't see a lot of questions before, but is there any questions from the audience before we close this? Okay. Very good. So the other issue that comes a lot is sort of where we've got two solutions. We've got the Avamar, we've got the data domain solution. Any sort of reflection from? I mean, you talked about Veeam. Any reflection? You guys are doing what you're doing. Is there any synergies between the two where you could see them coming together in your environments, and what interest would that have for you?
I'll speak for myself. I see that if you have a bigger environment and you're doing more of a lot of backups across smaller bandwidth, WAN infrastructures, and so forth. Yeah, I think it's something you probably want to try to bring them together. But I would say for our environment, we're more centralized. So basically, even though we have 21 locations, it's all done via thin client. So we pretty much are centralized. So we really couldn't benefit from it. So we don't have to worry about the bandwidth issues. It's all local backups, other than the replication for our DR. So for our scenario, for our location, we would not benefit from the hybrid effect. We could pretty much do what we need to do with local disk storage with replication.
Fair enough.
My view is I hate backup and I hate restore. Backup is an overhead, restore is a delay just at the time when you don't want it. So what I want to see over time is I want to see my virtual infrastructure kind of snapshotted. That snapshot basically offloaded onto something that dedupes it and compresses it and all that sort of stuff, and then does replication to another site, because I don't want all that stuff to take up take up CPU on my primary storage. I don't want it, I don't want my storage processors to have to do all of that offloading work. So it's good to suck it off onto an external device, push it down to another site, and then I want it in that other site in a format which I can actually use there and then, without having to touch it. I don't want to have to suck everything out of some proprietary monolithic file format defined by a backup vendor somewhere. I want it out there as VMDKs. One of the great pluses of virtualizing is that you've got a consistent virtual hardware environment. I want to be able to say, okay, here's this application. It's an application that my developers have said they want 4 vCPUs, 8 gig of RAM or 16 gig of RAM or whatever. I want to be able to say, okay, now we're going into recovery mode, so I'm going to spin that up. I'm going to knock it down to 2 vCPUs. I'm going to knock it down to 4 gig of RAM. So you'll have lower performance, but your application will still work. And then, depending on what happens to be important to the business on that day, I want them to be able to tear it up if they actually need it. So, if it's the 24th of the month, payroll gets priority. If it's the 31st of the month, billing gets priority. If it's the 1st of the month, collections get priority. And let the business make those decisions, because that's not our job. They're much better at that.
So the idea of using efficient replication methodology, not so that you can remove the backup process entirely, that's blasphemy. How far away are you from that, achieving that?
Well, I'm looking closely at Veeam, as I guess most of us are. It's very nearly there right now. You can spin up your backup image at your recovery site, test, validate the backup, actually on your backup store now.
Right. So that's still backup, though.
But it's not. It's not backup. It's data protection, not backup.
Right.
Backup sucks. Restore sucks even worse. What you get is something you can use at the other end and test.
Right. I think backup sucks a lot less now.
That's true.
Certainly more than 10 years ago, 5 years ago, even 3 years ago. But thank you, gentlemen. Thank you for attending, and I hope you all have safe and good travels back home.